This is the Honda Elevate and I'm going to answer all your questions about it. I asked you on Instagram to send in your questions about this Honda Elevate and you sent in plenty. Today we're going to go over each and every one of them and hopefully cover everything you want to know about the Honda Elevate. Now before we go ahead, make sure you like this video. If you have more questions that I don't answer in this video, leave them in the comments below and I will get back to you, and subscribe to the Evo India channel. Now let's dive right into this review. Question number 1 from our friend Vijendra Vikram. How big is it? Well, it's as big as you'd expect it to be. This is a Creta rival and it sits in that region. In terms of width, it's actually bang identical to the Creta. But then when you come over to the side and you look at it, in terms of length, it's actually 40 mm more. The wheelbase is longer as well. And in terms of height, it is 15 mm taller. So it is exactly as big as you would think it would be. The second question actually picks up from there, from AutoFreak9440. Road presence question mark. Now, don't expect the Elevate to have the same road presence as something like an XUV 700 or a Tata Harrier. It doesn't. This sits alongside the Creta, Seltos in that segment, and in that space, it looks fine. It looks plain. It looks simple. It's an inoffensive design. It's a safe design. The headlamps are in the right place. There's a fairly large, but again, inoffensive grille. The shape of the car, very SUV-like. From the rear, again, a very safe design. So it looks handsome, but it doesn't wow me. Something like the Seltos, it looks very cool. And the Elevate, it looks good as well, but like I said, it doesn't grab eyeballs. Now the next question is from Vishwanath Arun. He asks, what is the interior quality like? Is it plush like the Accord or basic like the Amaze? Neither, Vishwanath Arun. You've missed the point entirely. You've gone a segment above and a segment below. The Elevate, it is based off the Honda City. And so the interiors, the quality, the fit finish levels are at the level of the Honda City. Now let me run you through this cabin and explain to you what it feels like. You've got a lot of soft touch material. So this faux leather, it's all over the place. You've got it on the dashboard, you've got it on the door cards, you've got it on the door handles. Very nice to touch, feels good. You've got this fake wood as well. These inserts, again, they're fake, but they feel nice to touch. And even these piano black inserts feel really good. The top of the dashboard, it is hard, scratchy plastics, but you can't expect the entire dashboard to be soft touch over here. The seats I must talk about because they're really comfortable. The Honda City, I've always said, has the best seats in its class, and I think the Elevate now, it has the best seats in its mid-size SUV class. They're really plush, really comfortable, really good lumbar support, nice headrest. It's a very comfortable seating position. Other bits about the quality, all the buttons feel really tactile to touch. They feel solid, just like on the Honda City. Even the steering mounted controls, they feel really solid, robust, and nice to use. They're very well damped and they feel good. Nothing is clicky, nothing is cheap. And while we're on the topic of the interiors, let me just run you quickly through the features that you get on the Honda Elevate. So you get a part digital, part analog cluster. Your left hand side of the screen, it has a dial, or it looks like a dial, but it's actually a digital screen that you can modify, and you can get the tachometer, or you can get different sort of information within the tacho. Your right hand side, analog speedometer, and in the middle you have an MID. You've got a large infotainment screen. Now this is new compared to the Honda City, and it gives you wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Below that, your AC controls. You've got a wireless charger over here, which is great. Many people now do appreciate that feature. And you've got cup holders, good door pocket spaces. You've got a sunroof, but it's a regular size sunroof and not a panoramic sunroof. So in terms of features, I wouldn't say it's top of the class. Stuff like the Creta, the Seltos now are very, very heavily loaded. But the Honda Elevate gives you what you need to feel comfortable. And the quality of the cabin, the layout of the cabin is very intuitive, very well designed, and it feels good. This color tone as well, I really like. The next question is from Freedom Rider 95. Performance compared to Seltos and Creta. Now, let's get moving and check out what the performance of the Elevate is like. Now the Elevate, it has a 1.5 naturally aspirated petrol engine. It makes 119 bhp and 145 Nm of torque. Now the Seltos and the Creta, they get a number of engine options. So you've got the 1.5 nat asp engines, which are direct rivals to this engine, but you also have diesel engines and turbocharged petrol engines. And honestly, we've gotten spoiled by these turbo engines. Even the Volkswagen, the Skoda, they all have strong TSI motors, and the sort of torque delivery that these engines give are very, very strong. The new Seltos with the 1.5 petrol engine, it's a properly fast car, but this engine is not a rival to those engines. It would be unfair to compare them to the turbocharged petrols. It has to be compared to the naturally aspirated 1.5s in those cars. And in that sense, this feels more than adequate. You need to remember it's the same engine out of the Honda City. So you get similar sort of performance. They have done a few tweaks here, mainly to the gear ratio. So they've lowered first and second gear. First and second gear are also spaced closer together, and that gives you a slightly more brisk feeling of acceleration from the get-go, but it's not punchy quick like a turbo petrol. Compared to the naturally aspirated engines in the Creta and Seltos, I'd say it's got strong performance, it's got great refinement. At a standstill, you cannot even hear the engine. A lot has gone into dealing with the vibrations of these engines, and generally Honda engines are fairly smooth, so the little vibration that it does have is dealt with. And at standstill, it's pin drop quiet. And even when you're getting a move on, it's refined, it's smooth, it likes to be revved. And like all of these naturally aspirated engines, if you really want to get a move on, you've got to take them to the upper reaches of the rev range. That is where the real performance is. You've got to khicho them, as you say. You've got to really rev them out to get moving. We've been driving on these steep hills, and it does slightly struggle to climb, especially with 5 in the car. You've got to put it into first to climb. You can't climb effortlessly in second. It just doesn't have the torque to do that. But that's the nature of these engines in this class. They are built more towards efficiency than performance. Okay, next question. Ravi_Singh says, how does it stack up against the Skoda VW 1.5? Okay, this answer is going to be short. It isn't as powerful. As I said, those TSI engines, they're really strong. They make a lot more power, a lot more torque, and you cannot compare this 1.5 nat asp against those engines. It's an apples to oranges comparison, and this can only be compared against other 1.5 nat asp cars in its class. A fairer comparison with the Kushaq and Taigun would be the 1 liter TSI. And in that respect, this has more nat asp characteristics. It's smoother, it revs out more freely. The 1.0 TSIs have more of a slug of torque, and they're also 3 cylinders, so they're a little more unrefined. Jayesh Joshi, emphasis on manual variants, ? Manuals matter. Yes, manuals do matter. Love slotting it into first, love letting out the clutch to get a move on, and it's nice to see a manual in this car. The manual was always going to be there, that is without a doubt. The Seltos, for example, doesn't get a manual in its diesel and turbo petrol variants, but it gets a manual in its nat asp 1.5 petrol engine, and that's because this class of cars, the buyers looking at these naturally aspirated engines, don't mind a manual. The Honda manual, it's as you would expect a Honda manual to be. It's very familiar, especially compared to what we're familiar with in the city. It's got a slick movement, it slots in nicely, it's got a nice mechanical feel to it. You've got a light clutch, a reasonably short throw, and it's a real gem of a gearbox to roll through. Like I said earlier, ratios have been shortened to get brisker acceleration off the line, but apart from that, it's pretty much identical to the Honda City manual transmission. It's also worth talking about the fact that the Honda also gets a CVT transmission with steps and with paddle shifters. Now, I haven't driven that car yet. We're supposed to drive it after I get done in this car. Yes, you do get the option of an automatic. It is a CVT. Here's another question. ADAS ? Now, the Honda Elevate, it does get ADAS. In fact, you get level 2 ADAS on it. And with that comes a number of features. So you get lane departure warning, lane departure mitigation, so it'll steer back on its own into the lane. You have front collision mitigation, so it'll try to brake if you're going to get into a collision for sure. You get adaptive cruise control, which is always nice on the expressways these days. On some of the newer roads, you can actually use it really well, and you also get automatic high beam headlamps. So it automatically switches between low beam and high beam basis the traffic ahead and the actual lighting conditions on the road. Is it good? Yes, it's good. It's not as comprehensive as the Seltos' suite, because the Seltos actually gets a rear radar as well, which the Honda doesn't get. So it's, I'd say, one step under the Seltos, but still a very comprehensive suite of ADAS features that you get with the Elevate. Dollar21 asks, how is the ride quality? Is it as good and comfortable as the Dusters? Now, the Duster was actually the archetype of this segment, the mid-size SUV segment, and it actually had incredible ride quality. It was such a comfortable car, and you could bomb down bad roads so quickly without ever unsettling it. Now, the Honda's ride quality, it is impressive, it is good. We're on a typical Indian road which isn't completely flat. You've got little undulations and bumps and dips and stuff like that, and it actually deals with 99% of it very, very well. It feels very planted, very stable. There are dips, there are crests. It doesn't get unsettled by stuff. That was a breaker over there. It just flew over it without trouble. It feels very composed on our roads. The ride is comfortable, mind you. It soaks up the roads very well. If there are smaller bumps in the road, you barely feel them in the cabin. There's no crashing through bumps, and you don't find yourself slowing down so much for bad patches of road, because it genuinely can be blasted through these bad roads. But does it feel as good as the Dusters? I don't think so. The Duster felt so solid, so good. In the grand scheme of things, the Honda Elevate does have good ride quality, but I don't think it's as good as the Dusters, or in the context of the current lineup of cars on sale in this segment, the Grand Vitara for that matter. The Grand Vitara also has really good ride, but it genuinely rides very well. This is a car that is, you can tell, built for India, because it actually deals with our roads very well. At slow speeds, it's absorptive of bad roads. You can tackle broken patches with confidence. At higher speeds, it's very stable. You can drive it fast. Even if there are undulations in the road, it keeps its body under control. It doesn't get unsettled too easily. It is a fair bit of fun, actually. Talk Passion asks, how is the handling, ride and build quality? Any body roll due to high CG? First, let me get the build quality out of the way. It feels well built, it feels solid, and because it's a Honda, it should be very solid and very well built. Now, ride, I've already spoken about. Handling, it's actually good. Earlier we were driving when it was pouring, now it's dried up a little bit. It's not as rainy, and I've got slightly drier tarmac where I can push the car slightly, and it's actually very compliant. The steering, the front end, it does exactly what you want it to do. You can drive down a narrow road like this very confidently, place the car well, steering feels direct, and the suspension is also compliant. So there are a lot of these mid-corner bumps that would normally unsettle a car, but the Honda Elevate just takes them in its stride. It's actually not a bad handler. It feels light on its feet, it feels nimble. It's got eco tires on it, but it's still managing to carry good speed through corners. I'm quite impressed. There's genuinely very little to complain about here. It may not feel as robust as some of the other SUVs out there, and I'd say something like a Kushaq and a Taigun may beat it on outright cornering, but this is still very good, and it does so while being so comfortable and while being so easy to drive. You know, it's not cumbersome in any way. It doesn't trade in comfort for sportiness or for handling. It manages to do both, which is what is so impressive about it. Next question. Kevin Revs asks, is it fun to drive? Honestly, I'm having fun. It's fun in the same way the Honda City is fun to drive. It's not got that slug of performance that you've come to expect from modern turbo engines, so don't expect to be reaching 100 kilometers an hour in record time. But what you have is a nice engine that likes to rev. You have an engine that sounds nice, is smooth, is refined, and you've got a chassis that actually is pretty willing in both in terms of ride and handling, so you won't be disappointed. It may not be benchmark in segment in terms of fun, but I'm having a good time, and at the end of the day, that is exactly what your measure of fun should be. Are you happy behind the wheel? Are you smiling? Are you enjoying? Honestly, I'm enjoying driving the Honda Elevate. It may not be the most enthusiast focused car in its segment, and it may not light the fire in my belly and make me want to blast up a fast canyon road at every chance I get, but find a winding road and it won't be boring, that's for sure. Next question. Perception asks, hybrid when question mark. Now, the Honda City has a hybrid, that's not new, but will the Elevate get a hybrid? I'm not quite sure. Honda, every time we ask them that question, they just say, we've committed to making a BEV version of this car by 2025, and that's what we're focused on. But they haven't outright denied the hybrid over here. So I'm not sure. I hope it gets the hybrid. I think the hybrid will do it good. It'll get better performance. It'll get great efficiency. And think about it, almost every car in this segment, at least the ones that are doing well, have multiple engine options, you know. So you've got the Kushaq and the Taigun, they've got 1 litre and 1.5 TSIs. The Grand Vitara, it's got the NatAs petrol and you've got a hybrid. The Creta Seltos, they've got 3 engines. You've got a NatAs, you've got a turbo, and you've got a diesel. So multiple engines seems to be the way to go in this segment, and Honda just sticking to one motor doesn't seem competitive enough. If they get the hybrid in, it would establish themselves with the technology that the hybrid offers. And honestly, I love that hybrid car. It just gives you so much efficiency, it gives you performance, and it's insanely complicated, but it's also just seamless. So I think that's a great drivetrain. If they can get the drivetrain in, it's an imported drivetrain, if they can get it in, put it into the Elevate, it'll be great. But as of now, it's not happening, at least officially. Manurawal 29 has asked, price reveal date and real-time fuel efficiency. Honestly, it's hard to comment about fuel efficiency right now because we've been shooting. When we're shooting, we keep the car on for long periods of time to take photos of the exteriors with the lights on. So the fuel efficiency figures are always skewed. Once I get the car in Pune for a longer test, I will give you fuel efficiency figures. Price reveal date, expect the price reveal to be later in August and the launch sometime in September. How are the NVH levels? I think the NVH levels are good. On the go, it feels very cocoon. Like I said, they've really worked on the vibrations of the engine, and even on the go, it feels really smooth. There's barely any vibes in the cabin, and cabin noise is fairly composed as well. Does it get ventilated seat function? No, it does not. I was looking for this too. It's a really rainy day outside, so you don't really need it today. But in the summer, you will need it, and no, you do not get ventilated seats. Those ORVMs look huge. Are they really that big? They are huge, and on today's drive route, they have caused me small issues with blind spots, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to drive this car on the highway as well and see what it's like in terms of blind spots. ItS.D asks, does it feel solid enough? And it does feel solid. These Hondas have always felt solid. There's a lightness about them in that there's less weight in the way it rolls down the road. It doesn't feel as hefty as some other SUVs out there, but it feels strong, it feels well built, it feels robust, and it feels like it can deal with our conditions. And it's a Honda. Honestly, Hondas just last forever. It's never going to break. The engine will run smoothly for years and years and years. The build quality of these cars is phenomenal. They may not feel expensive, like the doors will feel light and stuff like that, but they will last forever. For the next question, I'm gonna have to go into the back seat. On the back seat, Kunal Pashine asks, rear seat cabin noise while going through rough road and pebbles, second row comfort. I'm gonna ask the second question first. Second row comfort, I think this is a very comfortable place to be. If you look at the amount of space I have, there's lots of knee room. You need to remember this has a longer wheelbase than the Creta. It has lots of headroom. There's no panoramic sunroof here. This roof has been scooped out and I've got tons of room above my head to, well, I'm not tall, but if somebody else was taller than me, they'd be comfortable here as well. The seats as well are really nice and comfortable. You've got, again, good lumbar support. Not too many car makers think of lumbar support when designing their rear seats, but here you've got it. It's a natural seating position to be in. Much like the Honda City, the slope of the floor is there. So your feet are not flat, but they point slightly upwards, almost like you've got a little bit of footrest. And that's quite nice. The windows are fairly low down and you've got good visibility outside. The materials at the back again are very nice. You've got soft touch in the door, you've got soft touch on the seats. Obviously this is leatherette, but it feels nice, and I really think this is a good rear cabin to be in. It feels nice and comfortable. 3 can sit abreast as well. It's a little bit of a squeeze, but 3 can fit here fairly comfortably. We squeezed in 3 guys earlier today getting out of the hotel and they were just fine. Now the comfort over bad roads. Now this road is not perfect. It's got small bumps and humps in it. Not too many pebbles like you mentioned, but it's just a typical Indian back road, and over all of this I'm fairly comfortable. When you go over a bump you can feel a little bit of a kick in the back, but that's not unsettling in any way. It's just the nature of our roads and no car can absorb all of it. And as for noise in the back, I don't think the noise is bad at all. I think the NVH is good. Even in the back seat, I'm fairly comfortable. And if you're looking for the Elevate as a back seat experience, I would recommend it. It is really enjoyable. Okay, I hope that helps. I've just focused this review on answering your questions because so often we get caught up in saying what we want to say that we don't answer what you all want to know, and that's what I've tried to do here. Briefly, to give you my overall impressions of the Honda Elevate, I think it's a very sorted car. It doesn't do much to excite me, but it's reasonably feature loaded. It doesn't get as much as a Creta or a Seltos. For example, those cooled seats, they aren't there. The panoramic sunroof isn't there. You don't get electrically adjustable seats in the front. Feel a lot of the sensations that you feel in the city in this car, and that's not a bad thing. The City is a very nice car. Honestly, I think it's the best car in its segment. Even though the new Verna has launched, even though the Slavia and the Virtus are out there, I really like the Honda City for the package that it delivers, and in that sense this is in that same league. You know, it's a very sorted car, and if you're looking for something to drive that's easy around the city, that's stress-free, that will just need its routine service and nothing else, this is the car to go for. So what do I think of the Honda Elevate? I think it's a very sensible SUV for very sensible buyers. It's not going to wow you with a 300-page long features list or with GT badges and a turbo DCT drivetrain. But it's got the fundamentals spot on. It's got a very comfortable interior. It's got space on the inside, a refined, efficient engine, good ride and handling balance. It's got the right things that will make you want to look at it if you're in the market for an SUV in this space. It's not going to excite an enthusiast, but it will make sense to any car buyer who's looking for a mid-size SUV. As for the prices, I expect them to start around 10.5 lakh rupees ex-showroom, go all the way up to 16 lakh rupees, 17 lakh rupees for the manual variants, and a little bit more for the CVT variants. At that price, it's going to go head-to-head with the Hyundai Creta. And in that space, I think it's really worth giving this Honda a look because the Hyundai is incredibly capable and loaded to the gills with features, but the Honda, I promise you, it has a charm of its own.